One. Hello and welcome to our group's replication project. My name is Paul, and today we're going to be discussing our study, which was about reducing rapid eating using a discrete stimulus. In our case, it was a timer. So let me introduce everybody who's in our group. First off, we have Lauren.
Hi.
You know what? Let me make it like that. There we go. We have Lauren. We have Miss Kristen.
Hi.
We have Alex.
Hi.
And we have Michelle.
Hello.
So without further ado, I'm actually going to kick it to Lauren, and she's going to talk with us about the purpose of our study.
So like Paul said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the study. It was stated by the original study's authors that this article was created to extend the literature in this area by training an adolescent girl with autism to eat to the pace of a vibrating pager, using a rule and a vocal prompt in the absence of physical prompting, response blocking, and programmed reinforcement. So with rapid eating, it is a problem that many individuals face and is a common issue for those with developmental disabilities. Rapid eating can be considered socially inappropriate, like drawing negative attention to oneself, and can have an effect on one's health. It can lead to many different health problems like overeating, obesity, choking, vomiting, and aspiration. So in one study in particular examined how one's eating behavior can have an impact on metabolic risk factors in the Japanese population. It was shown that people who eat rapidly may not be able to recognize the signals of fullness in the satiation center of the brain. They found that eating slowly and ending meals right before feeling full plays a part in reducing metabolic risk factors. Then in another study that investigated that eating fast is linked to obesity in middle-aged men and women in Japan. Obesity is a contributor to many metabolic disorders that can lead to morbidity and mortality, and the results of this study state that BMI of individuals increase alongside with increased rate of eating. So now I'm going to go a little bit into our lit review for my article. It is called "The Relationship Between the Rate of Eating and the Degree of Satiation." So the purpose of this study is to examine the relationship between the rate of eating and the degree of satiation. The participants of the study consist of 10 women who are of average age and are in a fitness program because they have expressed the concern of their weight. Participants ate their meals in an office setting for a controlled environment and were provided direct observation and immediate self-reporting. There were two conditions that one was slow, fast, slow, and the other was fast, slow, fast. And the participants were exposed to both of these. They were given 6 meals that they had to eat over the span of 2 days, with one condition one day and the other condition the other day. Under the fast condition, they were told to eat quickly, chew fast, and consume large amounts. And in the slow condition, they were encouraged to eat slowly, chew slowly, and consume small amounts. They found that all 10 participants in the rapid eating condition had low levels of satiation compared to that of the slow condition. So now I'm gonna bring it over to Krista with another article.
Okay, so the article I looked at was called "Evaluations of Stimulus Intensity Fading on Reduction of Rapid Eating in a Child with Autism." So this study had one participant who was a 10-year-old boy with autism whose mom expressed concerns about him choking and gaining weight and hypothesized that this was a result of his rapid eating. So the study looked at the effects of a vibrating pager on eating speed, and they wanted to measure if the pager would decrease eating pace and also if the prompt could be faded effectively. So they also examined whether it would be more effective to fade the prompt by intensity or by frequency. And they found that the pager successfully decreased eating pace and also was successfully faded by fading out the intensity of the prompt. And next, Michelle is going to talk about some more of our literature review.
So the article that I did our lit review on was feeding problems, gestational symptoms, challenging behavior, sensory issues in children and adolescents with on the autism spectrum. So these individuals all had comorbid ASD, meaning that they are diagnosed with multiple disorders, including autism. All of the participants' caregivers reported feeding problems before they were allowed to participate in the study. They filled out 8 questionnaires, and the whole entire study focused on every feeding disorder there was. So in the research section, they talked mostly about how this is a very under-researched area, hence why they felt it was necessary for the research, and that this is an area that needs more exploration in the future. This study looked at all feeding problems with ASD, but the results on rapid eating was significant, which is what our project is on. The results for the study found that 76.5% of participants presented with rapid eating, and this was 104 participants out of all 136. Next, we go to Alex for her literature review.
Okay, so the article that I did was Eating Fast Leads to Obesity, Findings-Based Self-Administered Questionnaires Among Middle-Aged Japanese Men and Women. And in the study, there were 3,737 male and 1,005 female participants. The researchers examined the association between the self-reported rate of eating with the body mass index, or the BMI, and the change of BMI over 20 years. And the results of this suggested that eating fast would lead to obesity. Now we're going to move to the methods of the project. Okay, so for our project, we had 2 participants. We had one male, Paul, who's 26, and one female, Lauren, who's 27. And then both participants, they work full-time as well as take graduate level courses online. Prior to this project, neither participant knew each other, and they live in different areas in the United States. So the setting of our sessions took place via Zoom, since they do live in different areas, and then the meetings were held between 7 and 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. During the sessions, the participants were seated in front of the computer for the entire duration of the session. Now we're going to go into materials. The materials that we needed were a device that was compatible for Zoom, so either a cellular device or a computer. We had a 20-second timer, the data collection sheet, food that was prepared by the participant, and an eating utensil. And you'll see that I put if applicable, because if a person was eating a sandwich, they obviously wouldn't need a eating utensil. The behavior definition that we had was 1 bite, and that would be a bite of food larger than the size of a pea that crossed the plane of the lips that was deposited in the mouth. And for non-examples, we put the ingestion of any beverage that would be served with the meal. And then now we're going to kick it to Lauren with the data collection and the design.
So for the data collection, duration was used in recording data. We recorded the time between each bite that participant took. And now for the design, the study we decided to replicate is a single subject research design. In one form of a single subject research design is a withdrawal design, and there are many different variations for this design, like A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, and then etc. The design that this study utilizes is an ABA design, which has a baseline, intervention, and a baseline phase. The purpose of a withdrawal design is to inspect the effects of the intervention by alternating baseline in the intervention conditions. This makes it clear that the behavior change is a result of the intervention based on the implementation and the withdrawal of the intervention. There are many strengths to using a withdrawal design, like the effects of the intervention of the intervention are very clear. This makes it easy to see changes in the level, trend, and the latency of the change. There are limitations to design, though, like the ethics of withdrawing an intervention from the participants, or it is difficult to completely remove the intervention in the withdrawal phase. So now I'm going to move on to the baseline and treatment phases. So in baseline, the meal is placed in front of the individual and a timer is set. The meal must be limited to solid foods in order to meet the 20 chews requirement called upon in the operational definition. No prompts are given to the individual, but mealtime conversation can occur. Once the individual has completed their meal, the timer is stopped. The observer recorded the times taken between the bites. Recording starts when the first bite is consumed and stopped when the last bite is taken. So now in the intervention phase, the meal is placed in front of the individual and the timer is started. The timer is set for 20-second intervals. When the timer goes off every 20 seconds, that would act as a sound prompt and then would take a bite. After the next 20 seconds has elapsed, the timer goes off and the individual can take another bite. This is repeated until the individual has completed their meal. The whole meal does not need to be consumed. The individual can, however, eat until they are full. The number of bites is tallied or counted, but they should only be taking bites every 20 seconds. The time between bites is recorded. So now for the withdrawal phase. The meal is placed in front of the individual and the timer is started to record time between bites. The individual is encouraged to eat slowly. Once the individual has completed their meals, the timer is stopped. The observer then records the length of time between bites. So now I'm going to bring it over to Michelle.
I was responsible for recording and collecting the IOA data. So as you can see through here, the first table has Paul's sessions. Krista took data on Paul's sessions, and I took data on Krista. So on the right-hand side, you can see the IOA percentage was 100% each time. The next person that I observed was Alex. Alex took data on Lauren's sessions, and then I took IOA data on Alex's data. Even though you see here that the data matches up, we had to round up the numbers, but for the individual bites duration, there was a little bit that was off. As you can see on the right side, one session for 1014 was at 97%, and 11-4 was at 99%. So next we are, treatment integrity. So we did.
Am I messing up and going too quickly? I can back up.
Oh, you're okay.
Okay.
So treatment integrity, phase 1. So we actually had to do 2 different phases as it was mentioned earlier. So we needed to have 2 different checklists in order to ensure treatment integrity. The first one was on the first phase, and it was that everybody was on the Zoom call at the same time, the meal was weighed before and after, the food was solid, that they were just following all the steps of placing in front of them, setting the prompt, they were taking the bite when they heard the timer. Each session, the observers and the participants would fill out this checklist, and then the next checklist for the withdrawal phase is a little bit shorter because we did take away the sound prompt, but it basically followed the same format, and just to ensure that everybody was doing what they were supposed to be doing, and we had complete treatment fidelity throughout the project. Next, we are going to go to Krista with the results.
All right. So both of our participants did have a functional relation. You can see there in Lauren's graph, there was a decrease in eating pace. As you can see, it is higher on the graph. So there's a functional relation in her data, as well as Paul's. Paul, if you want to go to your graph real quick. Yeah, so you can see the same thing in Paul's graph. His eating speed decreased. So Lauren's baseline average was 17.1 seconds between bites, and then 20.1 seconds in intervention. And then it maintained around 20.5 seconds between bites when the intervention was withdrawn. She ranged 14.8 to 19.9 seconds between bites and baseline, and then her range times decreased to 19.3 to 20.6 seconds in intervention, and then maintained around 20 to 21.1 seconds between bites when the intervention was withdrawn. Paul's baseline average was 16.3 seconds between bites, and then went to 20 seconds between bites and intervention, and then he maintained at 20.1 seconds when the intervention was withdrawn. Paul did meet mastery criteria one session before Lauren did, which is why you can see Lauren has 4 data points in the withdrawal phase and Paul has 3. You can see both the participants still averaged around the goal of 20 seconds between bites when the intervention was withdrawn. Now we're going to go to Michelle to talk about some of the limitations.
So for our limitations, we actually have 2 different sections. We have the group's personal limitations, which is what I will start on now. So the group needed to meet at different times every week due to changing work and life schedules. For example, we are recording this at 10:25 at night. All members of our group had significant health and life challenges throughout the course of collecting data. One of us had a baby, some of us had COVID. There may be possible time delays in the recording because it was streamed online instead of in person. The dinner times were different for the participants than their original dinner times. To decrease reactivity, the participants played a show in the background while being observed. Reactivity was still reported from the participants because they were intentionally eating slower because they were being recorded in our project. And every member had a full-time job, and fatigue was often reported throughout the process. Most meetings we met pretty late at night. Next, we're going to go to Paul for the replication limitations.
All right, so what I'm going to be discussing with my limitations slide is going to be our limitations as they relate to the strength of the evidence we gathered. So unlike with the original study, data was only collected in the home setting in our study, whereas in the original study, data was collected in 2 different environments. It was collected both at home and in the clinical setting. Obviously, it is superior to collect data in more than one environment if you're going to be testing the efficacy of it. This way you can prove that it works even when you start manipulating variables such as the environment. We were not able to do that due to the limitations of the assignment. And another one that comes with the limitations of it being a school assignment is it is a narrow participation pool. So in the original study, they sought to test the effectiveness of the intervention with a person in the ASD community, as you can see on the slide. The participants in our replication featured a 26-year-old male, me, and a 27-year-old female. Both are students of the same graduate program and are both full-time workers in the field of ABA. So it's very similar for a population that's meant to be representative of something bigger, ideally. The participants in our replication had no history of rapid or messy eating, unlike in the original study that we were replicating, where it was reported that that child, the girl with ASD, the female diagnosed with ASD, had a history, according to her parents, of eating very rapidly and quickly, and it would often cause messes. So the intervention was shown to be effective, as was stated earlier in the presentation. You can see here I've written the intervention led to an increase in seconds between bites among our participants, but the increase was already functional for us when we took baseline. So the increase was not very dramatic as it was in the original study. So, and of course, because the people engaging in this study, all of us in this group, were the same people that we were taking data on, I think it's worth mentioning that there may have been a bias because of that. I'm sure we were more susceptible than if it was people who were not involved in the production of the product. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up with a conclusion too. So this study sought to replicate procedures described by Page and his colleagues in their 2016 publication that we were replicating in order to test the efficacy, excuse me, in order to test the efficacy of the intervention when reproduced under similar conditions. Like the researchers in the original study, we found that having a discrete stimulus in the environment, which in our case was a beeper, in the original study it was a vibrating watch for the 12-year-old girl, and its purpose was to indicate again when it was time to take the next bite. We found that it was effective again in increasing the amount of time between bites in all of the participants, both Lauren and I. It is unknown if this intervention would be effective among individuals with more severe deficits in inhibitory skills. And I'm not just talking about in the autism spectrum community, but also among neurotypical population as well. So all that being said, we do believe that our study does establish interval-based sounds as a potentially effective therapy for raising self-awareness and therefore slowing the eating pace in graduate students. So that concludes our presentation. Thank y'all for listening, and thank y'all in my group for bearing with me. I was the one navigating the slides and I was being a little goofy at times, but we do hope that everybody has a happy winter and happy holidays. Stop recording. Bye.